Okay, good morning everybody. It's Eric from EPautos.com, and I'm gonna do a little bit of a monologue here as we drive down the road in this 2015 Volkswagen Tiguan. Kind of a mouthful, kind of a difficult to pronounce name for a vehicle. I've just posted the review up at EPautos.com, and I'll shortly be adding this video to the review. Chiefly though, I don't want to talk about the car per se. I just want to talk about something that's changed in this vehicle, and which has changed probably, I suspect, not because of consumer demand or market demand, but rather because of government demands. And what I'm talking about is that the 2015 Volkswagen Tiguan is no longer available with a manual transmission. Previously, this vehicle was one of the very few compact crossovers that you could buy that did offer a manual transmission. VW has quietly dropped that from the lineup for 2015. You'll find no overt mention of it over at the VW media website or the public consumption website. They merely mention that henceforth the direct shift gearbox, pointing the camera down so you can see that, which is a type of automatic that differs slightly from a conventional automatic with the torque converter, is now standard equipment across the range in all the Tiguan models, including the base trim model. And as a result of that, the price has increased significantly. Previously, you could buy a front-wheel drive 6-speed manual Tiguan for just over $23,000, which was very competitive with other small Japanese brand compact crossovers, models like the Honda CR-V, the Toyota RAV4, and the Mazda CX-5, which is probably the closest in spirit to this particular model, this Volkswagen Tiguan, in that it emphasizes sporty driving qualities and had a peppy engine, and also could be had with a manual transmission. All right, so here's the thing. Why did Volkswagen get rid of the manual transmission option? I suspect it has to do with the looming, almost here, federal fuel economy requirement that's known in bureaucracies in DC by the acronym CAFE, C-A-F-E. And CAFE is short for Corporate Average Fuel Economy. And it's a requirement that every vehicle manufacturer's fleet, that is all the vehicles that it builds, achieve a certain bar, a certain level of fuel efficiency. And if they don't meet that average target, then the manufacturers get hit with gas guzzler fines, which they wind up passing along to consumers. And there's two interesting things that I'd like to mention to you. And the first is that CAFE formerly was applied in distinct categories. For example, there was a CAFE standard for what are called light cars, that is passenger cars, or cars I should say, excuse me, just passenger cars. And then there was a separate category for what they called light trucks, which included SUVs. And that standard was a little bit less strict, reasonably, because after all, SUVs, by their nature, in order to do what they do, in order to, for example, have some off-road capability, in order to be able to pull more, tend to weigh more, tend to have more gas-thirsty engines. So the government was a bit more lenient toward those vehicles. Well, that's changed now. All the vehicles that a given manufacturer produces are now subject to the CAFE standard. And the CAFE standard now is not bifurcated into a city and a highway. It is now an average standard. And that average, effective next year, well, next model year, which will be here in just a matter of a couple of months, is 35.5 miles per gallon. And that is an extremely difficult standard to reach, a very high bar to get to. It's one thing to get 35 miles per gallon on the highway. It's very difficult for any vehicle to average 35 miles per gallon. Very, very difficult. And that's why you're seeing a lot of manufacturers, and this includes even high-end prestige brand vehicles where you think that gas mileage wouldn't be that much of an issue, going away from V8s and even 6-cylinder engines and going with smaller, often 2-liter 4-cylinder engines, and then on the lower end of the scale, 3-cylinder engines with turbos, in this quest to reach that bar of 35.5 miles per gallon, which is going to go up even more radically a few years thereafter to 50-something miles per gallon. All right, so to get back to this Tiguan and the issue with the manual transmission, because of technological advances, today's automatic transmissions tend to deliver better fuel economy than the manual transmission version of that vehicle would have in the past. It used to be exactly the opposite, that if you wanted to get the most mileage out of a given vehicle, the way to go was with the manual transmission, and the reason for that was that there were efficiency losses through the driveline of a conventional hydraulic automatic transmission. A lot of people don't realize this, but the old type automatics were literally fluid drives in that the engine's power was transmitted through a hydraulic connection to the driven wheels. Modern automatics have things like lock-up torque converters, and in the case of this Volkswagen, this direct shift technology, which eliminates these eliminates or nearly eliminates these efficiency losses. And in fact, because of the smarter shifting algorithms that they've built into these computer-controlled automatics, they tend to get the best gas mileage. You'll notice this if you look through the specifications of almost any current model year car and compare the EPA mileage numbers of the manual equipped car, if it's available, with the numbers of the same vehicle, same engine, but with an automatic. Okay, so here we have a case where the automatic, even with the optional all-wheel drive system, all-wheel drive, they call it 4Motion in this car, even with that all-wheel drive system, which adds a little bit of weight and also adds a little bit of resistance, rolling resistance going forward, that version of the Tiguan actually got better gas mileage than the front-wheel drive manual-equipped Tiguan. It wasn't a tremendous difference, just a couple of miles per gallon. Something that the individual consumer probably wouldn't care too much about. After all, really, if you get a vehicle and it has 3 miles per gallon, more or less, does that really appreciably affect your life? It may, but probably not. However, it does matter very much from a corporate point of view, from the standpoint of a major automaker like Volkswagen that might build tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of a given vehicle. Because if you factor out that 3 miles per gallon over the fleet average, it really affects their overall numbers. And so they do the proverbial math, and they discover that, you know what, we really should think seriously about getting rid of that manual transmission. We're not selling that many of them in the first place. Manuals aren't as popular as they used to be, but more importantly, it's hurting our competitive position, or it's hurting our position vis-a-vis the government, which will come down on us and hit us with these fines. So if you're wondering why manual transmissions seem to be getting harder and harder to find, one of the reasons is in Washington. It has to do with Uncle Sam and the government's continued ratcheting up of these fuel economy standards. Now, some people may think it's a good idea for the government to lay out these mandates to force the car companies to build more fuel-efficient cars, but the market mechanism would work just as well. If people out there who buy vehicles wanted higher fuel economy cars, well, surely the manufacturers would respond to that. In fact, it strikes me as silly to think that if the consumers were clamoring for vehicles that delivered 35 or 40 miles per gallon, the manufacturers wouldn't build them. It makes absolutely no sense. The market's driven by the desires of people, not by what the government tells manufacturers to produce. So that is today's vidcast, and I will have that up hopefully very soon when I get back from my little run here at EPautos.com. I hope you'll post your comments and thoughts, and if you like the video, please share it with others, and please tell others about EPautos.com. And also, if you happen to have any video of atrocious driving, that is clover driving, please submit them to us. You can submit them on the website. You can submit them to Clovercam. You can email them to me directly. My email is epeters952@yahoo.com. But please try and do everything on the website. It's very difficult for me to respond to individual emails. Well, that's it, and we will hopefully catch up with you again soon.